Thanks for taking the time to meet.
Oh,
I know
no
with
problem.
today's schedule, it's been hectic, maybe?
Yes, yes, extremely.
But you got your lunch in?
Yeah.
All right, excellent.
Excellent.
I just had a video to show you. I just want to pull it up so it's ready and we can get started. Okay. Sheet for capturing notes. There you go. That's good. I made a copy of the standard, so we're all on the same page of what we're talking about for the lesson that I saw. So I want to start off with the gold star aspect. So I know in our department meetings and throughout the school we've been talking about just focusing on a daily measurable objective. And I know that fine arts and performance, it's a shift from what you guys have been doing. So I appreciate you noting that on your lesson plan, what the standard was. So let's take a look at what the standard was. Explain and support interpretations of the expressive intent and meaning of musical works, setting as evidence the treatment of the elements of music, context when appropriate, the setting of the text, and the personal research. So what do you think the impact is for your lesson of having that specific standard?
You said what is the impact?
Yeah, what's an impact of being able to identify that one standard for your lesson?
Being able to really pull out what they need to know as far as being able to explain different things, interpretations of expressions, and just being able to having support as they explain, you know.
Right. I like the way you said that. So it's not just explaining, but supporting their understanding as well. So today, let's try to narrow that focus a little bit more. So you've identified the objective, but what is a specific skill within that objective that you could focus on within your lesson? So the way I thought this might be helpful is if we kind of deconstruct the lesson that I observed yesterday, and then we can see how we can apply it to a lesson moving forward. Does that sound like a good framework? Okay. So taking a look at what that standard looks like, what would be some of the keys for success for students to be able to, what is one skill within here you would want kids to focus on?
Well, the hardest thing is actually applying the standard when the student does not know fundamentals of playing an instrument. It would be so much easier if the students knew how to play an instrument, then we could definitely get into the depth of like what different articulations meant and how to play them and how to explain, them being able to explain what they're doing. But even with just learning basic notes, they still have to identify and even interpret what things mean in the music or in the musical work.
So you brought up almost a prerequisite skill to this one before we even deconstruct that skill, just identifying and learning notes. Or I'm just trying to get to what is one skill you would want to cover within that lesson. So by the end of that lesson, would you want kids to be able to identify notes? Would you want them to play with accuracy?
Well, in that standard too, it also says, like moving past the first part, it also says that cite evidence of treatment of the elements of music, and I guess for them to actually know what the elements of music are.
Okay.
That actually goes with the note, how long the note lasts, the different volumes that you can play with, all of the different elements that actually make the music. So I think that's personally why I picked this standard to work with, because a lot of the standards are, we can look at them as a novice, like being a novice, a person who's never played, but a lot of the standards are surpass where our students are, where they should be in high school.
Right. But you did a nice job, so breaking down elements into music into maybe two components, how long a note needs to last and what is the volume level. So are
Oh, can I
those,
write on this?
yeah, it's for you, no, I
Okay.
made a copy for you, you can
Oh.
write whatever you want, whatever's gonna help.
Alright.
So just knowing when we're looking at a standard, and the standard you chose is relevant, it seems like it's within that emerging level where you want your kids to be, that basic level that we're starting at. But if we spoke throughout the lesson about how long does a note last, or about a volume of a lesson, that seems really applicable to the practice that you were doing.
Mhm.
So I'd like to consider how we can pull out that specific part of the standard. So once you identify the standard and then you have it in your objective, what are the specific words you want to include within your objective and within your lesson? So consider how, once you've identified that standard, how do you wrap that into your objective?
Let me pull up the list.
I have a copy of it as well. So what I'd like to do is just take a look at this quick video clip that talks about how to use, I know you're different than Common Core, but it talks about the benefit of using the language of the standard within your objective.
I use Common Core language with my students every day. Today's objectives were a variation on Common Core. I articulated what we were working on today, and the objectives were the skills and the standards. We are going to be voicing our opinions, especially if we're unsatisfied with the conversation, and of course always using our technical support. I use this language to students, and students are starting to use it for themselves and with each other.
I'd really like to use the text, like from either one or any of the essays to support what I'm saying is important.
And allows us to have a common ground with which to discuss what the English language arts actually is and what we're supposed to be learning.
Okay, so I'll just pause right there. Were there any takeaways that you see in deconstructing the skill of a standard wrapping into an objective?
I mean, I understand what the teacher is saying, but it's hard to look at something that's not my content and say, oh, you know what I mean? Like, it's hard
I
to,
tried.
you know, I know, and it's probably not a lot for, because that was a band class, so it was probably not a lot. I mean, it's just difficult to do. It's difficult
Yes.
to look at another content and try to, you know, but there are things that I can take away from it, I guess. I can take away how she, I guess she, you know, allowed I don't even know how Common Core plays into instrumental music.
Okay.
But, I mean, she did say that she, like the student was saying that they were pulling evidence. They wanted to support the evidence of whatever they were talking about. And that's, I mean, that's good. I don't, you know.
So I agree with you, and you know, I searched high and low. I did.
You did?
Yes, and that's one of the reasons I wanted to take this and put up videos of your class, because there's just not a lot of fine arts and videos and music.
Right.
So I
right.
hear what you're saying, that's why I came to you about, like, how do we take a closer look at this standard?
Right.
But
right.
knowing what we know, that you mentioned already how long a note lasts in volumes as components of the standard. So just knowing that when you're writing an objective and when you're giving your directions, focusing on those key skills. So if we're going to talk about how long the note lasts in volumes, how could you say that as far as directions you're giving to the kids before you have them play?
Well, that's also a prerequisite because you have to explain what the different volumes are, right? So, I mean, I can tell them to warm up at a certain volume, or it depends upon what part of the, you know, if I say that we're working on a piece of music, maybe we can play it at a particular dynamic and say, okay, so we're going to play piano, which is soft, you know, through our warm-up, or, you know, maybe as they're looking through a piece of music, especially if I, you know, like I'm trying to introduce them to different pieces of music, when they get the music, they can try to identify or circle, you know, those dynamic markings.
So you just gave a whole bunch of great things that we could do.
Right.
So I pulled up your video if you wanted to take a look. When you had the kids play, and you did a nice job playing the trumpet, by the way.
Thank you.
That's my son's instrument. I love it.
Thank you.
Yes,
I'm not even
it
a real
sounded-
trumpet player.
Really?
No, I'm a saxophonist.
I never would have guessed. So the kids, so you had the girls up here, and then you had the drummer back here. So it seemed like we went right from the do now. So the only reason I'm showing you this, it seems like this would be a great part in your lesson to introduce what you just talked about.
Okay. And I did tell them that they'll be sitting in different places, which is more concert band-like,
Okay.
moving forward, but
Okay, so here we're telling them to let's go. So knowing that we talked about the difference between a let's go and those skills that we identified, what do you see, what's the gap between those two? The lesson of let's go versus identifying what you want them to do from the standard?
I mean, definitely pointing out those things that I mentioned before, like we could talk about dynamics. If we could talk about dynamics,
Just 5 more minutes.
He got me.
Keep going.
the different volumes, and I definitely could talk to them. I could even show them. Well, you said how can I put this in the objectives? I lost
Not
total
necessarily.
track when
I
those
know
kids
the kids
came.
kept coming in. So let's focus on now when you're giving directions. So
Okay.
we identify what skills would be in the objective, and now we're going to transfer that to the directions you're giving the kids. So instead of a let's go, when you're playing, let's focus on.
Dynamics, or
Mhm.
and even since I'm playing an instrument for them, I could show them the different what it would sound like, or even if it's a short little quick video of what different dynamics are. If we were just focusing on dynamics, or even the elements of music, they have a piece of music, but we could I could tell them to play different rhythms.
Great.
And I could, show them the exemplar of what it should sound like, and then they play it back.
So what you did was just give lots of different examples of exactly what we're talking about. So let's just make a note so next time we can go back to it. So if we're going to talk about what an action step would be, let's break it down into maybe 3 different chunks. So your first action step is going to identify a skill and the objective. So within that daily objective, what is the specific skill that your students will focus on? Because that's something that we would replicate every day. Okay? Does that sound? Okay, good. So specify skill in the objective would be the first part. And then next is going to use the same language in your performance expectations and feedback. So when you're giving the directions to what to do, and when you're giving them that feedback on how well their performance is, you're using that same skill you identified earlier. Okay? And then we're going to bring it all together with your exit ticket. So you're going to align level of mastery to that specific skill from your objective in your exit ticket. So to bring it all together, your action step is going to just be using language from the standard and your objective and directions. All right? And then we're going to break it down into 3 parts. Specifying the skill in your objective is the first one. Using the same language and performance expectations and feedback. And then align the level of mastery of the skill with an exit ticket.
All right, so aligning the mastery with the exit ticket is something that's also difficult to do, and because your last couple of minutes you're trying to get the kids to pack up and everything, and before that, you've gone through the lesson and you may have already played several pieces. So how would I do that for my exit ticket?
No, that's a good point. So maybe we modify it. Maybe it's not an exit ticket. Maybe it's for feedback. So as you're giving that that formative assessment feedback, In the moment feedback after they play, you're just focusing on those specific skills that you mentioned, whether it's dynamics or element of music or rhythm. You're using that same language you identified from the standard in your objective in the feedback.
Okay.
So that brings up a good point. Maybe the feedback doesn't have to be an exit ticket, but it's whatever that formative feedback is that you're giving. All right, can you take a second, just read back, make sure we're on the same page, what you got?
Okay, so specify skills in the objective, use the same language, align mastery with the exit ticket, and then put feedback, formative feedback.
Right. Is there anything in there that sounds like it would be challenging?
No,
Okay, great. Let's just wrap this up by looking ahead. What is an upcoming lesson that you think you could wrap? It sounds like this standard is one with elements of music. That's, you could apply probably all year.
right. But you know, with new pieces being introduced, I mean, there are different things, you know, different elements of music that can be targeted each time, you know. Whether it is duration of notes and rhythms, or whether it's just how high or how low the notes might be. So each time, yeah, that's that, but you know, it will be a different piece of music. So we'll actually probably be working on this piece of music for a little while. And what I want them to do is I want them to eventually be able to write the dynamics in, because I pretty much gave them just a piece of music, and I want to eventually have them write the dynamics in, and I want to, but we have to talk about the elements and how they contribute to what we do. So
before you get to the dynamics, what elements do they need to know to make that an effective conversation?
First, just how to properly play the notes, a
Okay.
solid pitch, a solid sounding note. And once they get that, then everything else will be much easier as far as teaching different dynamics and slurs and just all the articulations that go along with music.
And the slur was one of the terms that the girl noticed.
Yeah, yeah.
So-
She did.
So let's take a look at what's an upcoming objective you think that you could align what we're talking about to. So if we're talking about elements of music, and as we know that's something that has so many parts that we can unpack and align to, is there anything, what's next in learning this piece of music that you're working on that would be another element of music?
We're really talking a lot about duration of notes.
Okay. So
Actually,
let's,
notes and rest. Duration of notes and rest.
notes and rest. So when you say duration, it's them interpreting what that time signature is or what that music looks like?
The time signature, what those notes look like, how long those notes last.
Okay. So let's take a minute and just craft what would an objective look like.
Okay.
Just take a minute, try to write one down and see what we get. What you got so far?
It just has, by the end of this lesson, students will be able to identify and perform notes/rhythms, and that's kind of where I stopped, because I wanted to make sure that I was definitely adding in a portion of the standards to my objectives.
So as you're writing, think about the 3 action steps that we talked about. So which part of this objective would then turn into the directions that you're giving them when they're practicing? So once you have your objective done, then the next step that we're talking about is what do those directions look like to give the kids to make sure that they know what you're looking for specifically, whether it's rhythms or notes and rests or time signatures. I hear you practice. It's just a draft. Just what comes to mind first? We're talking about aligning the standard with some specific skills.
I want them to be able to, see, I was going back and forth with if I want them to just identify and perform, or do I want them to explain and identify? And I think I want them to be able to, identify and then explain the various notes and rhythms.
Right, and actually that goes back to the text where it says citing as evidence. So
Mhm,
they'll be
right.
able to support it. So I think your idea of having them explain it,
Mhm.
is great. You can even script it in a turn and talk or have some posted questions in advance. So once you've told them what they're going to identify, explain, and perform, is there a specific skill in there you're asking them to do?
No, the skill would actually be to either perform it or to, be able to explain. Or you're asking as far as, what they're doing with the instrument, or?
Yeah, as far as what you mentioned
Oh, yeah.
before, so as, for example, like notes and rests and time signatures.
Mhm.
So which skill would you want to wrap into that objective to have them identify, explain, and perform? Something you would be able to see growth in within that one class period.
Okay. I could do that several ways. I could have a piece for them to play, a short piece, like from the beginning to measure, 14 to 15 in a piece of music. I could, in order to, I guess, would be to, to play that piece of music with, I guess with.
Well, drill down into, we're not just playing the whole music. Are we
Right.
looking at notes? Are you looking at, what are you looking for within that music?
I'm looking at the students being able to play or to, to play then I would have to put perform they can't just explain it and identify it, they have to actually do.
Perform, right,
So
right.
it should be perform, those notes
Okay.
with the correct,
Mm-hmm.
with the correct duration.
Great. So now we focused on the accuracy of the note
Mhm.
with the correct duration. So now it sounds like if we were to take more time later to write that specific objective, now you have those skills to focus on. So let's say, all right, it's time to play. You're telling them to get ready, but then you're also going to add, here's what I'm looking for. So what would that statement be?
I'm looking for accuracy with the duration of the notes
Mm-hmm.
and the duration of the notes.
Okay, great. What kind of feedback would you give the students for those that are either on task or struggling with the duration?
I would continue. I would either. You said what is the feedback? Okay,
So let's say I'm
feedback
off,
would be-
like I am not doing this right.
Right.
My duration is not accurate.
Well, it depends upon how far we've gone into it. If we've gone too far, I do a lot of playing for them
Mm-hmm.
so they can hear what
Okay.
it sounds like.
Yep.
Because we can easily say that something is 2 beats, but the kids don't know what that means if they can't actually hear it being played for them. I would tell them to maybe they need to write the counts underneath. Like I would have to, or I would just ask what is the part that's holding you up, or what is the part that you don't know.
Going back to that explaining part you mentioned.
Right.
Right. No, I think you've thought through what the objective looks like. You've thought through what standard we're using, how to deconstruct it, what skills to focus on, and then how to apply those skills to the performance task. Is there a time where you think you'll be doing this in an upcoming lesson?
Well, I'm trying to take that piece of music that I gave them in chunks. So that's something that we'll be doing, probably until we play the piece. Always correcting those, duration issues and not even focusing on the accuracy of the note, but just how long you hold the note. So that's something that'll be going on for a while.
Okay, well,
And with every piece, we'll still be going over the same duration of notes, but the time signature could change. So this is something that's ongoing.
okay, good. Well, I will pop back in next week and I'll
Okay.
look forward to seeing it.
Okay.
Any questions? Anything
No,
you need?
that was, no.
Okay. Any big takeaways?
Yeah, the biggest takeaway is just, I guess reinforcing, some of the, just changing maybe how I say some of the things and focusing on, and I've been doing this for a long time, trying to focus on one component of the objectives instead of, trying to do everything.
Right.
That makes sense,
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense, but I can see it's definitely a shift for the
Yeah.
department.
It's a big shift.
It is a big shift,
Yeah.
but you're making headway, so thank you for your effort
No
and your
problem.
time as always.
All
I
right,
hear
no
you're
problem.
doing like,
Yeah, they're ready.
waiting.
right, right.
I see Keith in the hall, I see Keith, you're doing great. He just loads.
Yeah, he does. Just get his grades together. We'll be fine. That's the next part.
That's true.